Hi everyone, welcome back to the next in this series of videos. This is the third video in this series, and here we'll be talking about the alienness of Japanese vowels. What I mean is the mismatch between Japanese vowels and our English vowels. When you hear somebody speaking a foreign to them language with a very bad accent, more than anything, on the whole, and this is a big generalization, but on the whole, what you tend to be hearing is their vowels. They're speaking this foreign language using their own native vowels, and that's why they sound so bad. If you were to take one Englishman, one Scotsman, and one Irishman who all spoke Japanese with very bad accents, you would almost certainly be able to tell very easily who was the Englishman, who was the Scotsman, and who was the Irishman, because you would be able to hear it in their vowel sounds. English is actually a language in which most accent variation resides in vowels. The things that make me sound British and that make an American sound American and that make an Aussie sound like an Aussie are generally our vowels. There's more to it than that. Rhoticity is also important. I say car, and an American would tend to say car, something like that, but most of it's in the vowels. Your vowel qualities in any language are generally determined by the position of your tongue, by the configuration of your tongue inside your mouth. Your lips also play an important role, but it's mainly about the tongue. The thing about vowels is that when you make a vowel sound, your tongue is just perched there somehow inside your mouth. When you say t, there's a specific part of your mouth, a passive articulator that your tongue tip comes to touch. That's your alveolar ridge. Go tut 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 and you'll be able to feel it. If you make a k sound, then the passive articulator is actually your soft palate, right? If you go k k k, you can feel your tongue sort of buckling up like this and touching the roof of your mouth much further back. But when you make a vowel sound, whatever it may be, you don't have any point of contact like that. And that makes it difficult to understand what your tongue is actually doing. This is why it's so hard to pronounce foreign vowel sounds correctly. If I say cut and cat and ask you to pronounce those two words too, what's the difference in what your tongue does when you say cut and what your tongue does when you say cat? Try it. Cut, cat, cut, cat. It probably won't be very obvious to you what the difference is. And this is the core of the problem. It's very difficult for us to deliberately, consciously interfere in this vowel production process. So it can be very, very difficult to articulate foreign vowel sounds correctly. And it can also be very, very difficult, of course, to hear, to perceive foreign vowel sounds accurately. Your brain hasn't yet figured out, when you're learning a foreign language, which sounds precisely correspond to which vowel phoneme, right? If I take the word strut and the word nurse, you can hear that the vowels in those words are different but similar. Now, the vowel in nurse is longer than the vowel in strut, but don't think about that for the moment. Think about the vowel quality. You can see my lips moving, that's part of it, but they're quite close to each other, aren't they? If you were Japanese, how would you figure out where turned into or vice versa? It's actually quite a difficult problem. You have to retrain your brain. It's very difficult to do this and develop a native-like sense of where the boundaries are between these vowels. What about men and man? Now, those probably sound very different to you, but it's actually very problematic for lots of non-native speakers of English to develop a clear sense of where men turns into man or man turns into men. I have Russian students who pronounce men and man differently, but to my ear, both of those words still sound like man. To a greater or lesser extent, you will have these problems with Japanese vowels. Once you have some understanding of the two topics that we mentioned in the previous video, which is vowel duration and small tsu in Japanese, you might want to record yourself speaking Japanese and listen back to the recording and ask yourself whether or not your vowel qualities actually sound like Japanese vowel qualities or not. You may find if you're English that you sound painfully English in Japanese. You may find if you're Scottish that you sound painfully Scottish, and so on and so forth. If you do, it's your vowels more than anything. This is the easiest way to sound bad in a foreign language, to speak it with your own vowels. So what I want to do in this video is just run quickly through what I consider to be the main problems. We're not going to go through every single problem. We're just going to go through the main problems, in my opinion, that will be making you sound un-Japanese when you speak Japanese, focusing on vowels, right? So here I'm going to be comparing my Not received pronunciation, but received pronunciation-ish English accent with a standard Hyojungo Japanese accent. If you have some other accent, then you'll have to analyze it yourself to some extent. Again, these are the main problems. This isn't a rigorous description of every difference between Japanese vowels and English vowels. That would require a video 50 times as long. Bear in mind that no Japanese vowel is ever going to be exactly the same as any English vowel. They're always going to be at least slightly different. Point number 1, don't ever use the vowel O when you speak Japanese. If I want to say I'm British too, I say watashi mo Igirisujin desu. I do not say watashi mo. Don't ever say that. If you think of the way English words work, there's no English word that ends in the vowel O. You can have a mop, but you can't have mo as an English word. There are other vowels in English that can't be used in a word final position. Be can't be an English word. Bed, yes. Be, no. Mop, yes. Mop, no. I think this is one of the reasons some people insist on saying mo instead of mop, because it feels like a word to them. Either way, you can't say it. Now, if you say mo, as in mop, but without the P, is that correct? No, but it's close. It's a hell of a lot closer than mo. Never say mo, it sounds terrible. The Japanese don't have any vowel that sounds anything like it. Secondly, Japanese diphthongs, if you consider them to be diphthongs, and I am considering them to be diphthongs for the purposes of this video, Japanese diphthongs don't sound like ours. Let's take the Japanese word kaigai, which means abroad, overseas, in a foreign country. If I want to say, have you ever been abroad in Japanese, I will say, kaigai ni itta koto arimasu ka? Now, if I take the kaigai and pronounce it in an English way, I get kaigai, right? Oh, what a kaigai, as in shy guy or something like that. Now compare kaigai ni itta koto arimasu ka and kaigai ni itta koto arimasu ka. One of them sounds really English, the other one sounds, hopefully, reasonably Japanese. Diphthongs, which are double vowels, vowels where you transition from one vowel quality to another, have in a sense 3 characteristics: the initial vowel quality, the final vowel quality, and the contour of the transition between them. Even when vowels between 2 different languages appear to be similar, they're actually going to be different in all 3 regards. You can't just take your English diphthongs and use them in Japanese. It's not kaigai, it's kaigai. Listen to the difference between the English word hai and the Japanese hai, hai, as in yes, right? Hai, hai. They don't sound the same as each other. They actually sound quite different. This is important. If you use your English diphthongs to speak Japanese, it will really bleed across and give you a very foreign sounding accent. If you hear this in your own Japanese, if you hear this foreignness, this is one of the places it's coming from. Don't use schwa. Schwa is the archetypal English sound. It's the most common sound in English and one of the sounds that most makes English sound like English. Sofa, bother, in my accent at least. An American might say bother. But that's a roticized schwa. We don't need to talk about that here. About. The first syllable in about is a schwa. If you take the word accountability, it has 3 schwas in it. Accountability, right? 3 times in the same word. Every other syllable is a schwa. Schwa does not exist in Japanese. No vowel like that exists in Japanese. So the in sofa doesn't exist. The in strut doesn't exist. The in nurse doesn't exist. Those type vowels don't exist in Japanese. Never produce schwa. English speakers like to do this because schwa is so commonly used for unstressed syllables in English. The Japanese don't use it, and they don't have the same sort of system of stress as us anyway. Despite that, your brain will probably want to use it occasionally, and you need to try and eliminate it from your Japanese. Last but not least, the Japanese oo type sound isn't the same as our English oo type vowel, okay? We could talk about this in more detail, but a high back vowel, and just about any language is going to have some kind of oo type high back vowel. High back vowels are usually pronounced with rounded lips. Now, if you take a language like Spanish, it has a more pure high back vowel than English does. So the word for you in Spanish, or one of the words for you, is tú. The tongue position is high and back. Don't worry about that if you don't understand it. We can talk about it some other time. And the lips are rounded, so you get ooh, ooh, ooh. That's a more extreme ooh than we have in English. If I say shoe, It's not as extreme. I don't say shu, shu. Japanese has a high back vowel, but there's no lip rounding in it. The Japanese don't say ooh. The Japanese say something like oo, oo. So if we take, for example, the third biggest island in Japan, and we pronounce its name an Englishy type way, we're going to get Kyushu. What type of shoe is it? It's a Kyushu. It's a shoe that I wear when I stand in queues. It's a Kyushu. But that's not how the third largest island in Japan is pronounced. It's called Kyushu. Kyushu. You should see that I'm not really rounding my lips. If you listen to Japanese people speaking English, you will often notice that their oo type vowel sounds a bit weird. I'm not mocking them, I'm just pointing out that they have their difficulties in English, just as we have ours in Japanese. The reason they sometimes sound a bit strange is that they're using their vowel. It's as simple as that. Listen carefully to the way Japanese people make this vowel in Japanese, and you will start to notice that it is actually quite different to our vowel. Our own English vowel is also quite unusual. For a high back vowel, it's not actually very back. When I say tu in English, it doesn't sound like tu in Spanish. Our oo type vowel is arguably a diphthong, where you have an oo coming into a w. Tu, tu. There's actually a bit of lip rounding going on there, which makes it a w style sound. So arguably that's a type of diphthong, but we can't go into that here. Just remember that these vowels are different. The Japanese vowel doesn't have lip rounding. Kyushu, kyushu. Now I know that I ran through that quite quickly. We can talk about these things in more detail in the future if people are interested, but I don't want to drown you with detail today. So those are the main points that I wanted to communicate today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. Thanks very much for watching this video. See you next time. Bye bye. Ciao.